Hey, what's up? It's John Samuel, and welcome to All Access Live. Today, we have a very special guest. We have my friend Jason Menzo, who is the CEO of the Foundation Fighting Blindness. So, welcome, Jason.
Hey, John. Thank you so much, man. How are you?
I'm good. I'm glad to have you because there's a lot going on. You got the foundation. Y'all have the vision walk coming up, and I thought it'd be a great time just to kind of share a little bit about you to my network and also get folks involved in the vision walk and the foundation, because I think y'all are doing some amazing stuff, and you and I, we got to meet each other last year in a serendipitous encounter after an event and realized that we were pretty much neighbors. So
That's right.
so that's why I'm really excited to kind of learn more about you and your journey with the foundation. So could you share a little bit about the foundation, and then kind of we'll talk about how you got into it? Is that cool?
That sounds great. Yeah, thanks, John. Yeah, it was a serendipitous moment, actually. So, for those who are here participating in the live stream or watching afterwards, the scene was that John was leaving a restaurant, walking across the street, and I basically tackled him and said, "Wait a minute, I need to talk to you." I am the CEO of the Foundation Fighting Blindness. I live here in just outside of Raleigh, North Carolina, around the corner, literally from John. And that night was so funny because John, in his presentation, he was giving this terrific talk about his background and his story, and shared that he grew up in Cary, North Carolina, and we were, as a family, moving to Cary, North Carolina. And in the course of 10 or 15 seconds of chatting with one another, we realized that the house that we're moving to is like a block and a half or something ridiculous like that from where John grew up and where he lives now. So it was a great opportunity to meet you. And for those who don't know, the Foundation Fighting Blindness is the really the global leader in driving the research to bring forth preventions, treatments, and cures for a host of blinding retinal conditions, including rare conditions like retinitis pigmentosa or Usher syndrome or Stargardt disease, but also more common conditions like age-related macular degeneration. And as an organization, we're a very simple machine. Really, if you take all the complexities of everything we do and boil it down, we're out in the communities all over the country. I happen to be here in Raleigh, but we've got a footprint really all over the entire country and really all over the world. And we're engaging with the community out in the market. We're raising money. We're providing education. And then essentially every dollar that we raise, 80 cents on that dollar goes right back into funding research at the best academic institutions and laboratories all over the world, all the way through from discovering new potential treatments, all the way through to clinical trials and bringing forth treatments through the FDA and EMA in Europe. And so it's a complex machine, but really when you boil it down, it's a pretty simple machine. We're out raising money, and then we're giving the money away to try to drive research.
No, you're right. I mean, it's simple but complex, and back to simple, but it's a much needed, it's a much needed thing that we need, right? We need the foundation. We need to be raising funds to help, fund the research that's going on, because y'all have been doing some amazing stuff, and you've even gone from, you've launched a venture capital arm as well, right, with Opus.
That's right. Yeah. So the way I view our role in the whole ecosystem is that any facet along the continuum from, again, sort of like the early stage research that happens in labs all the way through to funding potential treatments that are in the clinic. Any facet along that entire continuum, which can be pretty complicated. There's literally hundreds and hundreds of different specific initiatives along that continuum we're involved in. And, one really important aspect of all of it is what happens when a treatment that is approaching the clinic gets moved from, UNC or Duke, University of Michigan, and instead now becomes an asset within, ABC Pharma.
Yeah.
And, so how does a foundation like Foundation Fighting Blindness play a role when it's really industry that's taking the baton? And so we created a venture fund. It's called the RD Fund, stands for Retinal Degeneration Fund. And through the RD Fund, we're acting as investors and we actually make investments in companies. One such company, John, you mentioned here in RTP, Research Triangle Park in Raleigh, is called Opus Genetics. And, Opus is one such company that is, got a handful of different programs that are near to going into clinical trials. And we're an investor in that company and helping to provide them the resources they need to be successful when they, bring these potential treatments.
How did you get involved with this? What is your kind of tie into, blindness and fighting it?
Yep. It's kind of funny. I learned not that long ago, a couple of years ago, I guess, when coming to the foundation, that the non-for-profit sector of our, sort of the marketplace is in and of itself its own industry. So there are many people that are non-for-profit professionals, and this is what they do for a living, whether it be working on an organization that's focused on Alzheimer's, or an organization that's focused on cancer, or autism, or blindness and low vision, or what have you. That's not my professional path. However, I didn't grow up in the non-for-profit professional environment. I grew up in biotech and in pharma, and I'm originally from Detroit. And my wife is the first to remind me and others that we've moved a dozen times for different career opportunities that have taken us all over the country. And really the opportunity to come to the Foundation Fighting Blindness happened about 5 years ago. At that time I was, and I don't know if I've ever told you the story, John, we probably talked about it, but at that time I was leading a business unit for a multinational company based out of Mumbai. So I was going back and forth to India and going back and forth to Princeton, New Jersey, living in Raleigh, traveling pretty much every week. And the business had grown and was really at a point of being pretty successful at that stage. And I was looking to do something that was maybe a different calling. Yeah. And right around that time, one of my really good friends, Ben Yerxa, had left industry to come over to the Foundation Fighting Blindness with a lot of really great ideas, including the venture fund concept that we were talking about a minute ago. Yep. And he came over and became the CEO. And then he gave me a call and said, would you ever be interested in doing something different with your life? And not knowing that I was at that exact moment looking to do something different with my life. And a couple months later, I joined as the chief operating officer. And then here we are 5 years later, I'm the CEO. Ben has since gone on to become the CEO of that company we were just talking about, Opus. And so it's all good. It's just it's funny how life takes you down a path sometimes, and you may think you're in control, but you realize, no, that you're just, you look back and say, gosh, I'm exactly where I should be. I never would have expected or planned to be here, but I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. I love what we do.
How is that? Like, what is it your everyday like? I mean, do you feel that every day? Do you just get excited? Or what is it about that your role as the head of the foundation?
It's you do have to take a step back, and you have to remind yourself, at least for me, I have to remind myself sometimes, because it's very easy to get bogged down in the daily challenges. So every organization, every job has challenges. Our organization, our field, my job is no different. And, I wake up oftentimes with the 3 or 4 things that are causing me to, lose sleep or feel anxious because they're big problems that we're trying to solve. Yeah. And, then I do have to take a step back and say, but gosh, the bigger picture is something that's really important and transformational. And listen, you're a prime example. I know dozens and dozens, hundreds of people that I am personally friends with that are living incredible, fantastic, the best life imaginable, and they happen to be blind. Yeah. And so there's no mistaking that. But the world the world that we're trying to impact is that there's an opportunity in the future where an individual that is affected with a particular condition has the opportunity to get a treatment if they choose. And that's the world that I'm trying to impact and bring forth these potential treatments for, again, the host of blinding retinal diseases. And that's something that's really important. And it's something that ultimately could be life-changing or transformational, not only for future generations, but even for the individuals that are here today. Because the momentum in this field is so fast that in the next 5 to 10 years, there could be dozens of new treatments. And that's when I wake up to a nasty email from someone and it makes me think, oh, I got to deal with this one thing. It's like, well, wait, what are we doing is important. Like just kind of take a step back sometimes and think about the forest for the trees.
Yeah, for sure. For me, like 20 years ago, or 23 years ago, when I was diagnosed, I was told there was no hope. And then 10 years ago, I remember meeting Dr. Jean Bennett and Dr. Mark McGuire up at CHOP and at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, and they said there's hope, right? And then, like just a few years ago, meeting Dr. Iacone over at Duke, he's like, things are going to happen, right? It's like things are, you mean that kind of shift from no hope to things are happening, and to what's going to happen in my lifetime. It's so exciting what's going on in this field.
Yeah, it is. And it is happening. And, again, I want to be really intentional about this, that, like you're one of my favorite people. We don't spend nearly as much time together, by the way. We're living around the corner with each other. But like, you're, to me, an example of someone who's living their absolute best life. Like, I aspire to be more like you in my life. And, I don't want this to come across like, individuals who are affected with blindness or low vision, need the work that we're pursuing. But I want us to be able to be positioned in a way that that these advancements are happening and they can be life-changing and transformational. And it's something that isn't just about hope or something about the distant future. I mean, I can every single day, I talk to individuals in our community who are affected with, X-linked retinitis pigmentosa as an example, where there's a treatment, 2 different treatments in the clinical trial right now. Or certainly everyone is probably familiar with the RPE65 gene that Jean Bennett, you're referencing, and now McGuire, you're just referencing, that they brought forth and now is FDA approved to treat this particular form of LCA or retinitis pigmentosa. And the impact is, an individual that was having one life experience, got a treatment, and is now having a different life experience, one where maybe they couldn't see butterflies or stars. Or I saw a video yesterday, actually, of probably a teenager who was seeing snow for the first time.
Yeah.
And, always could feel snow and imagine what it to look like. But, the words coming out of their mouth was, "Oh, Mom, I can see the snowflakes."
Yeah.
And this is post an intervention therapy. And that's the work that we're doing. And it's not lost on me how impactful that will be for people.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I mean, I really appreciate your perspective of this, because you're right. That it's, it took me several years to truly understand and believe and know that I can live a full life, right? And the thing with, even in my own perspective of my own blindness journey, is that for years I was, I've spent the first beginning years like, what can I do? Researching, right? Mm-hmm. Then I'm like, well, and it took me time to be like, there's nothing I'm going to be able to do. I'm going to leave it up to the experts, but I've got to learn how to live my own life. And I started to do that, right? And it really, a lot of that changed in 6 years ago when I just embraced it. I said, here, I leaned into my blindness and I learned how to thrive as someone who's blind. And so now, at least in my perspective, it's like, if something happens, great. But I know I can live my full life, like you said, today, right? And with my situation. And that's what I'm trying to help, right? Trying to make a more accessible world for people, right? And I think both sides of I think we need both sides, right? I think it's benefit, because some people do want to have, want that treatment. And I know, from my own experience working with Dr. Iacone, and some of the stuff that we've had, when I was able to see my kids' faces for the first time, it was awesome, right? Like it was super cool. And I'm really, it was a great moment. And no matter what happens, I have those memories. But again, I don't think I ever needed to see their face to know what they look like. And that's special. But I appreciate your perspective on this. And I appreciate you in the involvement that you do talk to people in the community, which I think is it's often overlooked. We talk about nothing about us without us, but you've included people who are impacted by this on a daily basis. How do you do that? Like, how important is that to you?
It's super important. I've got a handful of thoughts on even just some of the things you just said, but let me start with, within the Foundation Fighting Blindness proper, so the organization itself, we've got 60 some odd employees. 10% of the employees at the Foundation Fighting Blindness are either personally affected themselves with a blinding condition or are family members, immediate family members of someone who's affected. And so to me, it's really important that ultimately our workforce at the foundation represents our community in the foundation itself. On top of that, we've got chapters. We've got a great chapter here in the Triangle in Raleigh, but we've got 40 some odd chapters all over the country. So within the chapter, we're out in the community. We've got the Vision Walk, which we'll talk about in a second. We've got, certainly all these different mechanisms where we're engaging with our community, rolling up our sleeves and being out in the community with the people who are personally affected. To me, that's critical. At the end of the day, certainly it's important that we're engaged in activities to raise money, but it's all for the purpose of bringing forth solutions for the individuals who are affected. And so that only works if we know them, if we're part of their families, if we're friends with them, if we're integrated. This is our social network, right? And so this is who we are as an organization. It is also really important to me that while we're pursuing treatments and cures, we're also advocating for a life in a society that is not just tolerant, but is actually embracing accessibility needs to make the lives easier of those who are affected. The world is not, you said it in your book, I've lived it in our own family. We've got different condition that affects one of our family members in my household that reminds me every day how the world is not an accessible place. And I think it's part of what we have to do as an organization to be a champion to make the world more accessible for those with different needs. And whether that be, awareness of sensory needs or accessibility, audio, tones when cross, at street crossing. Just a million different specific examples, but that I think is part of what we have to embrace as an organization.
I appreciate that. Now, you did talk about the chapter here in the Triangle. You do have a great chapter. It's pretty amazing that we have you here in the Triangle, and then last year we had Alyssa Steele on the show and talking about the Vision Walk. But what can people expect from the Vision? I had the opportunity to take part in your Fish Camp 2023 up in Colombia, and it was amazing to see. I guess I never knew the size of the organization. You talked about the 60 plus individuals on the team, but the area that they cover. And so we're having the Vision Walk here in Raleigh at the end of April, but you're right, it's happening all over the place.
Yep.
So where can people go to learn more about and how to get involved in their own local chapters?
Yeah, and so not only all over the place throughout the country, but really all over the world. I was in London 3 weeks ago. We were having conversations about what would be the next steps to build our community in first in London and then throughout Europe. Currently, we're funding research all over the world. So on the money going outside, we're putting money wherever. If there was a great research taking place on the moon, we'd be putting money to the moon, right?
Yeah.
But from an engagement standpoint, we've got, again, Vision Walks all over the country and chapters all over the country and activities really globally. I think it's safe to say we do a lot of web activities and education globally, and all the information about what's happening and where it's happening and what is upcoming is at our website, fightingblindness.org. And there you can certainly make a one click away if you wanted to make a donation, or there is a really easy way to navigate to what activities are happening locally or nationally. And I will say that the website was designed from scratch just a couple of years ago with best-in-class accessibility design built into the website. And so it's screen reader friendly. It's easy to tab through. The architecture is laid out in a way that you don't have to listen to a bunch of garbage to get to the information you want. And in those who are low vision, right within the website, you can either increase font size, increase contrast. You can actually, there's a built-in screen reader right into the website too. So we try to make it as accessibility first design as possible.
I love it. All the stuff that y'all are working on, check out the foundation fightingblindness.org and really get involved. We'll be putting a link to join our Vision Walk team and join this, this cause and this effort and the movement that's happening, and get involved in wherever you are in the world. And thank you, Jason, for all you do. And thank you to the whole team. I know I'm so thankful to meet everyone on the team, and they're awesome. So thank you for that.
Thanks, man. And thanks for giving us this opportunity to chat and say hi to everyone. The LinkedIn verse.
No, thank you for helping us expand this. And